Welcome everyone to the final plenary session for Pathway to 17. My name is Gavin. I'm the co-founder and chief executive at Digital Frontiers. And in this final session, we're talking really across all of the streams and into the future around human capacity gaps and the role of developing a profession to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. With me today, I'm privileged to have a stellar cast. Let me start off by introducing Dr. Mechael from HealthEnabled, who is the co-founder at HealthEnabled, and I've worked with for some decade and a half already in digital health. We have with us SungAh Lee, who is the Deputy Director General at IUCN. That's the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And SungAh Lee is also a non-executive director on the Digital Frontiers board. Welcome, boss. And we have Sarah Corley, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Alliance of Digital Finance Associations. Thank you very much for joining me on this final panel. Just to frame our conversation today, what we're talking about is the Sustainable Development Goals. And what this conference is about is bringing the professionals that work on the Sustainable Development Goals together and having them talk about what's impacting their profession and what can enable them to, really assist in implementing those Sustainable Development Goals. What we thought we'd do today for the audience is really talk about it from three different angles. First of all, two angles looking at what are the kind of professions that we're talking about. What is a profession in the Sustainable Development Goal that isn't there today? And then secondly, to talk about what makes a profession. How do we go about creating these professions that will assist us in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals? So perhaps let's start with Patty. Patty, for a long time, you've been actually leading us in a profession called digital health, or the formation of a profession called digital health. And by us, I mean the entire industry. Could you talk to us a little bit about what is digital health as a profession? Why is it not in universities, or is it in universities that we can go and get it there? And perhaps just give us some examples or from your experiences as to, why we need to go about forming a profession to aid healthcare.
Great, thanks, Gavin. So really happy to be here, and thank you for having me on this panel. And so digital health is, the use of technology to improve health outcomes. And as anybody in the world who has experienced the last 2 years has seen, we have really needed to rely a lot more heavily on digital technology, both to respond to a global, health crisis of unprecedented proportions in our lifetimes, as well as to maintain, routine health services for people that need to access those services. And so it has really shed like an incredible light on the need for digital transformation of health. And as long as there have been computers and cell phones, people have been using mobile phones and computers to access health services, to provide health services, and to monitor those health services. But the health sector as a whole has been quite slow and frankly slower than many other sectors in fully, embracing technology and undergoing sort of like a necessary digital transformation. And but during COVID, a lot of countries have found ways to really make digital work for them, and are starting to build that like muscle memory on a scale that is really, really significant. And then in terms of like the professionalization, I mean, I think like what we really need is for, just your standard health sector professionals to, become digital health professionals in many ways, that they can use technology more effectively in their day-to-day lives and innovate using that technology, to provide better services, better quality of care, et cetera. But then also, digital health professionals that can design, implement, and evaluate, the use of technology to support the overall healthcare system. And we haven't seen that. Like, we haven't seen it across many countries. At HealthEnabled, we've been involved in a project or an initiative called the Global Digital Health Index. And within that, are a set of indicators on the workforce. And most countries don't even know what their digital health workforce looks like. And they don't know, the extent to which healthcare professionals, within university programs or that are in service have been trained in the use of technology. And so there's this huge disconnect between, what's really needed and then what's actually happening. And so, digital health is ripe for some sort of professionalization of digital health individuals, because it is a range of skills that are needed to effectively design and implement these types of programs and services. And in many ways, we're quite jealous of what you've done with digital financial professionals. So we're looking at you guys and we're sort of okay, what can we learn from you, that will enable us to apply it in a systematic way to health. And I'll just give one example that really exemplifies this. In Ethiopia, they completed the Global Digital Health Index, and they ranked quite high in training of university-based programs to train people in medical informatics, in health informatics, in public health data and technology. But when the Ministry of Health is looking to hire people to manage their programs, to design their programs, they can't find people with the relevant skill sets or the relevant experience. And so there seems to be this mismatch of things are very sort of theoretical happening within academic institutions, but not necessarily translating into hands-on, practical experience and having people that can really engage in an effective way.
Right. So, I mean, what I'm hearing, I have a question and a thought on this. What I'm hearing from you is this is 20 years back for inclusive finance, where we had the answers as researchers and thought leaders and understanders. We went and we ideated and trialed and tested and figured out what the solutions were. But over the last, let's say, 7 to 10 years, we've spent a lot of time making sure that we actually have skilled professionals in countries to implement these solutions. For our audience, which is a lot to do with inclusive finance and a lot to do with gender equality, right? And not a lot to do with digital health. What is the problem that digital health is solving? What is the gap? If we tie this back to the Sustainable Development Goals, even before coming to the profession, what is digital health solving?
It's really trying to help individuals maintain a state of health and well-being. A lot of people are using technology to improve their own health and to access health services and health information, but it's not well integrated into the system. And then on the service delivery side, there aren't a lot of services that are fully digitized in the way that they could be to provide seamless care to individuals where, people are, have a medical ID that enables their, health records to be shared across different types of healthcare providers, that they can access their own, health records. so that, you know, the system can provide better quality of care to individuals. And then on the back end, there are so many opportunities to leverage that data, you know, to increase advancements in health, you know, and the way that we provide health. You know, right now we have a huge gap in research and data from women, you know, and a lot of health interventions are really designed around men, which is why, you know, women are disproportionately, you know, prone to having heart attacks, because the, you know, the signs and the early signs of cardiovascular disease have been researched on men, and the risk factors are then applied to everyone. And then there's this disconnect between, you know, people in, you know, high income settings where a lot of this research is conducted, and then those in, you know, low and middle income settings where, you know, services are being deployed. And I think we have an opportunity to shift the entire system to become much more equitable, much more representative, et cetera, if we can, you know, really train people to be like cognizant and aware of how to do this responsibly, how to do this in an inclusive and equitable way. But we just don't have that. There aren't standardized competencies, there aren't standardized curricula. And I feel like we will do ourselves a disservice as a society if we don't really start to figure this stuff out.
Got it. SungAh, what, you know, are there gaps in climate? I mean, climate is, you know, one of the, I suppose, the biggest, you know, one of the bigger focus areas in the SDGs. It's topical on all fronts. It's affecting us on all fronts. Excuse the weather analogy there, but you know, when we look at the environment and climate as a whole, is there really a profession missing, or do we have the right professionals in the right places to solve these problems?
Thank you, Gavin, and I really like the way that you have open saying climate and environment, because I think that's really important for us to understand climate change. And currently we're seeing a huge biodiversity loss. We're losing our nature. This is basically the two sides of the same coin. And if I look at, you know, what are the SDGs, since I think this conference is about looking into human capacity to achieve SDGs, there are 4 SDGs that are directly connected to nature and environment. And those are SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation, SDG 13 on climate action, SDG 14 on life below water, and SDG 15 on life on land. So these are directly related to SDG, which we need to build the right professions. And then, of course, there are indirectly but very closely connected sustainable development goals, such as the food security or good health and well-being. Even on gender equality and good governance, there's a huge area that we need to think about environment and nature. And to respond to your question, Gavin, I see 3 major trends when I think about professional development in this area. One trend is slowly but surely environment and nature concerns are being embedded in all kinds of different professions. And this is because, as you mentioned, climate change and environment is such a cross-cutting topic that comes up in everywhere. For example, it starts with, you know, any CEOs in the big companies, ESG, environment, social, and governance, is one of their top agenda that the board is looking at. There's KPIs, there are other things that the CEO as a company should manage. But if we look at different functions like marketing professions, now more and more consumers are aware of what they consume have an impact on environment, and they want to understand. So even if you're a marketing professional, if for someone who's managing supply chain, et cetera, HR, there's a lot of a discussion on green jobs. So it's kind of being mainstreams as one of the foundational knowledge and skills that many professions need to build. The second trend I see is very sectoral. So there are growing sectors that we need more and more human capacity that is connected to environment and climate change. And these are, for example, a sector on renewable energy or plastic recycling, reforestation. So these are very specific sectors that directly connected to achieving these SDGs, and therefore the demand for professions are increasing. And then the third trend, which I think is most interesting and also need to fill the gap, is the convergence of skills and knowledge coming together. So we need professions that are able to bridge 2 to 3 different disciplines together to fill the human capacity gap that you have been asking. For example, we have people who have a discipline on finance. We have people who are climate or environment scientists. But what we now need is these two coming together if we think about building a successful carbon credit market or building a successful green financing. It's a little bit similar, I see, with digital and finance came together because you need a profession who understand both. And we see that in the space of environment. Similar with data and nature, we need people who understand data analytics, but also understand how we measure the progress and status of nature. And we have to put these things together. There is a growing profession that is Chief Sustainable Officer. So most institutions and companies now have it. And we should make sure this is not just a checklist. We actually need to have people who understand both sides to put it together as a profession. So I'll stop here, Gavin, but happy to answer any other questions as well.
No, I think you framed it well, and based on our prior conversation with Patty and you, what I'm hearing is we have a lot of skilled professionals all around the world, and a lot of professions, right? And what in each of these SDGs, perhaps what we're looking for is the bridge professions. In digital health, we're looking for a healthcare professional, but we're also looking for their ability to understand the digital tools available for them to apply to. In climate and environment, you have both the scientist and the environmentalist, and we're looking for those bridge professions, or we're looking to build the bridge professions in between that can map the language, and that's what we had in digital finance. Sarah, in the short time that we have, Sarah, you're sitting as the CEO of the Alliance of Digital Finance Associations, representing national associations of professionals that are formed already in around 12 countries around the world and accelerating. So you're really sitting at the tail end of the virality, the viral effect of creating a profession where professionals are signing up to professional bodies, and then those professional bodies are joining the Alliance. And you've been with us for a long time in building that profession, inclusive finance. And I'm wondering, just based on those experiences and where you sit now, beyond the classroom, what does it take to build a profession?
Well, it's really exciting to be here, and it's been an amazing journey. And I'm firstly going to sort of do a big shout out to all of those that I've worked with in the 22 different countries that we are looking at trying to establish these digital finance associations, because that's where they're also doing tremendous amount of hard work. And I wouldn't want the limelight to sit on me alone when actually it's those individuals out in those countries that have done huge amounts of work. So let me just try and give you a few quite practical, kind of concrete things that we've been doing that I think has made a difference. So when you look at a professional, it stems at quite often the thing that you're looking for is the qualification. And I think the partnership with the Alliance and DFI is such an amazing and great partnership, because actually, the Alliance isn't ready or, in any shape to kind of provide that qualification, but DFI through its digital finance courses provides that base level of knowledge. And then what over the last 3.5 years, you know, myself and the team have been doing is looking at, well, you know, how do we keep that continuous learning, that continuous professional development? We've had things like webinars, podcast series. Obviously, this event is a huge one, and it, you know, is a wonderful one as well. We've got a knowledge bank on digital finance as well as part of the DFI website. So we are trying to be a bit of a one-stop shop. If you need to know something about digital finance, what's happening, you know, information about the profession, then you know, we're trying to basically make ourselves as the place to go in partnership with DFI as well. We're also looking forward too, so not just thinking about issues that actually, you know, are happening or have already happened, but trying to keep professionals up to date with what is about to come their way. We've started to have conversations about central bank digital currency and you know, climate change, climate financing, green financing, because these are things that are relatively new and people are experimenting with, and those are going to happen, you know, year after year, because digital. You know, I mean, we're already living in a fast-paced world, but in particular, some of the professions that we're and the fields that we're working in are incredibly fast-moving. We've tried to create lots of touch points and networking opportunities for people, both, you know, online like we are today, but also by having those 22 locations where professionals pre-COVID and where it's now safe to do so, meet face-to-face to actually build a relationship with one another, to see another human being that has the same thoughts, fears, you know, ideas, suggestions, blockages together, so that people can really get together, you know, and ideate. And we've also created a, you know, a LinkedIn group as well, which amazingly, like, LinkedIn picked us to be as part of their small advisory board, because our little group of around 4,500 people has one of the highest engagement and interaction rates on LinkedIn. So that was amazing to sort of to see how people want to connect. And I think it's been really important that we create a safe place for everyone across the system to connect with each other. So we're talking about, like, there can be often different professionals within the profession of digital finance in particular. And I think we're hearing from SungAh and Patty, it's the same, you know, whether it's health or, you know, or climate, but you can have regulators in a room, you can have bankers, you can have microfinance, you know, it can be development sector. FinTech, you know, it can be a very IT related person, or it could be someone who's more on the accountant end of things. Actually that it's about people seeing each other as peers, as representing themselves, as being free to speak, free to connect, not seeing themselves necessarily labeled as being in those silos that's brought people together. And I'm also really excited, and we featured a number, you know, at Pathway, but also on our webinars and podcasts and blogs. You know, we've provided a space for these people in the digital finance profession to stand up and shine, to be part of a conference, part of a webinar, or write a blog, you know, be a thought leader in the space, so that we can start to see how that local level of expertise has developed. You know, digital finance is no longer like a handful of people that have that knowledge. Actually, we've got so many people in so many countries around the world that have a huge amount of knowledge. And so, yeah, I think really that's been one of the really things that I think has started to tip. We started to see people building a confidence in themselves, seeing themselves as being a digital finance expert. When I've spoken to a number of HR people at some of the, you know, big banks and big organizations working in finance, they can always see who is an active part of our community and their DFI training courses, because the language they use and the way they speak and the thoughts behind some of the suggestions they make, they're different. And so, you know, we've managed to somehow create this concept, I suppose, of being a digital finance professional. People have the knowledge that they need. People have the sense of belongingness they need. They're bringing a passion for change, right? Because we're not just talking about digital finance in, you know, to reach people who are already banked. We're actually a lot of the time pushing the conversation to be about inclusive digital finance, reaching those people who aren't banked, bringing around kind of social and economic transformation, as well as inclusion. And so, you know, I think the strong brands behind this, you know, we've got a DFI brand, which a lot of people know in the digital finance industry, but we've also had a lot of support from funders like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, FSD Africa, who are well known. That's also, you know, the kind of the brand, you know, knowledge, I suppose, and the, you know, the trust that people have in those brands have also helped build that confidence. And I'm, you know, beginning to see now people are starting to have confidence in the Alliance brand. Already I've had 3 or 4 conversations with people over the last 2 days of Pathway who want to form their own associations and join, which is fabulous. I think my last point before I stop, because I know we're almost at the end, is that we need to resource this, right? I mean, it's okay to say we want to build a profession, and I've been doing this work now for 3.5 years, and I love it, but I'm not going to lie, I'm also paid to do it, right? So we need to make sure that actually, we do have resources, we do have people, we do have the ability to sort of support people with, basic things like, Zoom accounts, the ability to be able to conduct some of their work locally, even if it's small amounts of money, to be able to afford refreshments at a meeting, to encourage people together. It's not something that happens without thought, without strategy, and without some resource. But boy, when it starts to come together, it is amazing how quickly it takes off. And the passion that we're seeing in these local and expertise, the passion and expertise we're seeing in these in-country local associations is just astounding.
Sarah, thanks. In the couple minutes, let me try and summarize actually what I've heard from each of you. First of all, I thought, I've heard from you, Sarah, that creating a profession is beyond the classroom. We get out theory in the classroom, but a lot about creating a profession is about peer connection, connecting with each other, is about an identity, is to say, I am this profession, right? It's about continuous learning. I have access to peers' thoughts, leadership through webinars, podcasts, events like this, and all that kind of stuff. I have access to knowledge, resources. I have access to continuous learning. But it does come down to, we identify as something and we form groups around that something, and those groups go and influence ecosystems and organizations and get stuff done. And I think that's really, if we had to define what is a profession, it is a group of people that go and do something that is on a specialist topic. What we're hearing from SungAh and Patricia, and what we're seeing in some of the work that we're doing now, is that sure, but we actually have to name the profession at the start in order to figure out where we're going. How do we know which professions we need to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals? We know the professions we have, and we know find that they're there, but maybe it takes some time and analysis for us to figure out what are these bridge professions that are going to bring environment and science together, digital and health together, digital and finance together. What are the professions that are going to create gender change, right? Well, let's name a profession, a gender equality change maker. It's a profession, and we establish that profession and we go and effect change. Climate change professional. It's a profession. They need to understand both the science and the environment. And then, Patty, as you know, we've been working a long time on this. A digital health professional. Let's create the profession. So if we can identify the profession, name the profession, create the curriculums, the theories, take them through the professional journeys of peer-to-peer connection and continuous professional, let them self-identify, and then let them go as groups and change the world. Ma'ams, I think ladies, that is all we have time for today, but thank you so much for joining me in this closing plenary. Sarah, congratulations on this event, and I am incredibly excited for next year's event, where we will have an entire stream on digital health, an entire stream on climate. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.